How would you feel about the legalization of sex work in the US? Making it legal would be safer for everyone. Workers could get tested regularly, they wouldn't have to worry about a pimp, and people wouldn't go to jail for trying to get their rocks off. Probably should be legalized in general, makes the work safer, lowers the possibility of assault and abuse while also taking a huge hit out of trafficking, allows SWs to potentially fight for a minimum salary, benefits and get security, lack of risk if a person leaves that someone will either try to retaliate, cause problems, could also be tied together to allow SWs to take classes to upgrade skills. If we offer medical aid and access to education to prisoners, why is it that we look at someone selling sex and say yeah that guy might have killed and eaten people, but at least he isn't a whore? Whichever of the Nordic model or full legalization ends up doing a better job of protecting sex workers from abuse and reducing human trafficking is the way to go. I think in theory it sounds good. The only concern I can think of would be the abuse of people who are down on their luck and need to use their body sexually in order to support their lives financially. Then again, it'd probably be better than the pimp-hooker relationship that exists under the current situation, so I think I'd be for it. Lots of people are down on their luck financially and make difficult health-affecting decisions due to monetary distress all the time. What? You think everyone that chooses to enlist in the military is a patriot? That everyone tasked with asbestos cleanup is a hero? It seems like a good idea, but studies done by the WHO have shown that the legalization of prostitution in middle to upper-level income market counties, like the USA, lead to an expansion of the market and report a greater incidence of human trafficking inflows. When Sweden and Denmark criminalized prostitution, they saw a decrease in human trafficking, whereas Germany, where it has been legalized, has seen an increase. Here's a link to a paper discussing the studies and stats if you're interested. Does legalized prostitution increase human trafficking? If you can't view that paper, here's a summary of it via the Harvard Law faculty. Seeing as a lot of women and dudes are forced to do it against their will and almost always can't get out of it, I wouldn't be a fan, personally. We need to remove punishment of the victims. Because being a prostitute is a crime, women are afraid to seek protection or justice when they are abused or trafficked, because it's just as likely that they will get in trouble as their pimps and johns. There's also the problem that many men who solicit prostitutes are not trying to do anything wrong, they are respectful, attentive, and pay what they owe, but a lot of men will beat prostitutes, or refuse to pay, and then the prostitutes will be at the mercy of their pimp who didn't get a cut. But because all johns are equally guilty, there's no way to encourage good behavior. Also, there are women who sell themselves as prostitutes but then use the fact that men are soliciting services to extort or blackmail the johns. Trafficking and pimping should still be a crime. Extortion and theft should be more severe when they arise from a sex-based transaction. The rest should be subject to strict regulations and subject to penalties from labor boards if regulations are violated. Decriminalizing it would save so much wasted police time, jail space and money. Many countries have legalized prostitution. Sex workers pay tax. Police resources are not wasted on busting them. Courts are not clogged with consenting adults having sex services. Definitely a good idea. It removes the crime from it. Legalize it fully, just like drugs, and you eliminate almost all the violence around it. Will it still happen? Yes, but you severely damage organized crime and sex trafficking. I don't agree with it morally. I never once had the urge to pay for sex like that, but I also believe someone has the right to sell their body consensually. The world would be a better, safer place. Agreed. Keeping it illegal hasn't diminished the industry, but it's made it exponentially more dangerous. Places with legal brothels allow for their workers to be in a safe environment with security, and often job benefits and accessible VD testing. It also allows for the customers to feel safer. Aside from all that, it's just weird that you can give a legal body massage on 99% of the body, but once that one area gets touched, it's prison time. If you could separate the human trafficking element, sure. That's the thing. How though? Fraught with difficulty. Legalization is a good step, but it can't be the only step. If you listen to the sex workers themselves, they desire a safe working environment, and economic control over their work, in other words, to have their chosen profession be treated such. Legalization alone doesn't guarantee this. All you have to do is look at the plight of migrant farm workers to see this. They are exploited and abused by employees and authorities alike, even though their work is technically legal. You're getting a lot of delusional answers on here with people who have no idea of reality saying, "Yeah, great idea." I'm guessing it's a whole lot of men who want validation that Susie they paid $50 for really enjoyed the 8th of the day, and not that she couldn't even remember their name or face and just wanted the whole thing to be over. The idea of classy, empowered woman as sex worker taking back her femininity is make-believe. Numbers of women like this are so small as to be statistically negligible. The majority of sex workers are either addicted to drugs, alcohol, have mental illness, are trying to support dependents, or human trafficked. Everywhere where prostitution has been legalized has resulted in increased human trafficking. Fact, there is no basis in reality that says it would decrease levels or safety of men or women forced into the life. Countries with strong social systems like Germany have seen a sharp uprise in trafficked prostitutes despite their incredibly strong social systems. Last time I checked, in the USA you can literally go bankrupt for having cancer. I highly doubt that it will be the opposite to the aforementioned countries' results when it comes to legalizing prostitution. The women trafficked in are often raped to break them, forcibly given drugs until they are physically addicted, or forced to have children as part of blackmail to keep them in the life. The reality of prostitution is much worse than you think. There are plenty of documents to prove it. Legalized prostitution makes it worse. In my opinion, the problem is that Johns are treated as lovable rogues rather than the rapists they are. Much harsher sentences for Johns and more treatment and services available for men and women involved would go a long way. Remove the criminality for the men and women who are prostitutes and increase the penalties for every other sick involved in the horrid scheme. But hey, forget about it. After all, cities have to build stadiums for multi-billion-dollar franchises owned by billionaires. Who wants to pay to help combat drug addiction and provide adequate care to the vulnerable in society? Might as well legalize it. That way lots of people can continue to look away at what is happening in the places they live. Yes, it would help save a lot of people a lot of trouble, but I personally can't support it due to how unethical the work is in the first place. I can't stop it, but I won't support it. What happens between consenting adults is none of the government's business. Now, if money is exchanged, then it should be taxed. That was a splendid self-contradiction. Right. As soon as I hit post, I thought, well, that isn't consistent. I don't necessarily agree with paying money for sex, but if you look at other countries where sex work is legal, it has resulted in less STDs and an overall drop in crime. Almost as if laws create criminals. I notice that most of the people opposing legalization on this thread are saying it's out of concern for the safety of the sex workers. If that's the case, then wouldn't it make the most sense for the law to view the sex workers as victims, not criminals? I don't think sex work is a good thing for anyone in the long term, and I don't think we should be doing anything to expand it. You cannot call prostitution a victimless crime, therefore you cannot legalize something that will inevitably have child workers. We as a nation also have issues with high sexual assault rates, wage gaps and other gender-related issues that legalization would not help. Weed will be legalized before sex work ever will. George Carlin had the perfect argument for a proponent of sex work legalization. Why is it illegal to sell something that's perfectly okay to give away for free? Philosophy Tube has a wonderful video on this subject titled Sex Work, essentially saying that decriminalizing, rather than legalizing, sex work is the best path to ensuring safety of workers. We have entirely too much sex trafficking and strawberries right now to even consider that. There would be a lot of pimps suddenly registering LLCs. A CEO named Slickback just doesn't have the same ring to it though. It's legal in some places in Nevada. Test M and tax M. I think it would take a while for it to not be a total disaster, but I'm an American currently living in Amsterdam. Sex workers here are regular employees. They pay taxes, get healthcare, so they do their jobs, go home and live their regular outside of work lives. Sex work is just work. But society is the problem. Sex work is not. From everything I've ever witnessed in the US, there would be riots, assault, violence, protests. It would be a shitstorm. So, I think on a high level, hell yeah, make it a tax-paying job, make it safe, give them benefits. Low level, I fear the transition period. To quote George Carlin, selling is legal, is legal, why isn't selling legal? Worried about the resulting increase in human trafficking. There are a bunch of places where it is illegal for a man to live off the earnings of a prostitute. Why? Because of the numerous schemes used to trap women into prostitution. I was scared. I live in Nevada. It's legal here. Legalize it. Focus on trafficking and underage situations. It's happening anyway. It's just underground with real tragedy and no support for the workers. I'm a licensed massage therapist. I've been propositioned more than once, and I'm comfortable shutting down advances from clients. I do have colleagues who have been assaulted when they denied a client extra services. Legalize prostitution. Regulate and tax it like you would any other vice. And differentiate between erotic and therapeutic massage. I want my colleagues and me to be safe. Porn industry. Am I a joke to you? Against it. We already see rampant drug use and coercion on the porn industry. Plus, picture the disregard people have for COVID. Now people with less integrity would be issuing life-changing STDs, and even bug chases would cause suffering for everyone. It didn't help that California reduced STD spread from a felony to a misdemeanor. It's a terrible idea. What people overlook is that making it legal has been proven not to make it safer, but to actually increase human trafficking. This has held true in Australia, New Zealand and the Netherlands. This is because demand has increased as a result of legalization, but very few women actually want to engage in sex work, especially citizens of countries with strong welfare safety nets. The rates of PTSD are higher in prostitutes than vets. People like to point out happy sex workers, but the vast majority would get out if they could. It is an industry which relies on desperation, coercion and misery. Yes, there are exceptions. There are women who love doing sex work, but when men visit prostitutes they are inevitably taking the risk of essentially raping a miserable, possibly addicted woman, whether her work is legal or not. I support decriminalization, not legalization. There are a lot of positive points in this thread, and just because I'm about to bring up a negative one, doesn't mean that the other positive points are worthless. However, one negative that is rarely talked about is that there is a correlation between places that have legalized prostitution and places with higher incidences of human trafficking. One theory of this is that when the prostitution infrastructure is legal, it's easier to hide traffic victims within it. My concerns are that it wouldn't be well regulated. In theory, it protects sexual workers. But it's no secret that workers aren't always valued and treated the way that they should be, and I wouldn't want to see a strong industry built off the backs of people who are doing something as potentially violating as sex work. While some sex workers are happy with their lives, there are many who want to get out, and legalizing the industry could either protect them or make it more difficult for them to get away. That, in some cases, the fact that money is being exchanged removes a worker's ability to consent. They can't necessarily speak up if they're in pain or if something isn't working for them, because it's part of a transaction and their client doesn't care how they feel about it. That people who really don't want to go into sex work, which is justifiable, wouldn't be able to collect benefits or unemployment because they hadn't exhausted every opportunity. There are stories of this happening elsewhere, and it's a horrifying and demeaning prospect. It makes perfect sense, provided that there are protections in place to ensure the health and safety of both workers and customers.